Could you imagine an entire tribe where fully grown adults are shorter than a 12-year-old? Believe it or not, fully grown pygmy adults stand at about the same height as an average 5th grader. Welcome to the world of pygmies, the shortest humans on Earth. Pygmy peoples are ethnic groups whose average height is unusually short. The pygmies are the shortest humans in the world. They are averagely 35% shorter than ordinary human beings. The term pygmyism is used to describe the phenotype of endemic short stature for populations in which adult men are on average less than 4 feet 11 inches tall. Pygmies may also be referred to as pygmoids. The term is primarily associated with the African pygmies, the hunter-gatherers of the Congo basin. The African pygmies comprise the Bambenga, Bambuti and Batwa. There are also Asiatic pygmies who comprise the Negrito populations of Southeast Asia and Ocean pygmies who comprise Australo-Melanesian peoples of short stature. The Terran people of Myanmar are also a pygmy population of East Asian phenotype. The term pygmy is sometimes considered pejorative. However, there is no single term to replace it. In French-speaking Africa, they are sometimes referred to as autochthone. Many thus prefer to be identified by their ethnicity, such as the aka Mabenga, Baka, Budi and Twa. The term Bayaka is sometimes used in the Central African Republic to refer to all local pygmies. Likewise, the word Bambenga is used in Congo. In parts of Africa they are called Wachua or Achua. Various theories have been proposed to explain the short stature of pygmies. Some suggest it could be related to adaptation to low ultraviolet light levels in the rainforests. This might suggest that relatively little vitamin D can be made in human skin, thereby limiting calcium uptake from the diet for bone growth and maintenance and leading to the evolution of the small skeletal size. Other explanations include 1. Lack of food in the rainforest environment. 2. Low calcium levels in the soil. 3. The need to move through dense jungle. 4. Adaptation to heat and humidity. 5. Association with rapid reproductive maturation under conditions of early mortality. 6. Unusually low levels of expression of the genes encoding the growth hormone receptor and growth hormone. African pygmies live in Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Madagascar and Zambia. An area covering twice the size of China. Before the 1st century BC, it is widely believed that the pygmies were the original inhabitants of Africa south of the Sahara. Pygmy people tend to live in bands of between 15 to 70 people and live a nomadic lifestyle within the forest, moving to new locations a few times a year in a manner that protects the environment from overexploitation of resources and wildlife. When relocating to a new home, the group will carry all possessions on their backs and create a new settlement by clearing an area of small trees and undergrowth to construct igloo-type domiciles made out of branches interwoven and covered with tree leaves. The forest canopy remains intact to protect them from the sun. The best known pygmies are the Mabenga aka and Baka, of the western Congo basin, who speak Bantu and Ubangian languages, the Budi of the Ituri rainforest who speak Bantu and Central Sudanic languages, and the Twa of the African Great Lakes, who speak Bantu Rundi and Kiga. The Twa live largely by fishing and trapping. Most pygmy communities are partially hunter-gatherers, living partially but not exclusively on the wild products of their environment. They trade with neighboring farmers to acquire cultivated foods and other material items. No group lives deep in the forest without access to agricultural products. Pygmies' primary food is wild fruits like wild plums, wild mangoes and nuts. They do not have any connection with the outside world, no technology, no devices and no vehicles. They don't even have electricity since their home is forest. They have a beautiful and intimate connection with the forests, as they believe in the afterlife and the spirits of their ancestors' presence everywhere. They hide their deceased in tree barks or caves. Pygmies make their own medicine using wild trees regardless of the denial of healthcare from the government. It is possible to come across Christians and Muslims among the pygmies who have come into contact with settled life in recent years. In fact, There is a mosque in Cameroon for them to worship. Pygmies are the largest group of nomadic people left on Earth who live mainly by hunting, fishing and harvesting wild food. Estimates claim there are between 250,000 and 600,000 pygmies living in the Congo rainforest. Although pygmies are thought of as forest people, the groups called Twa may live in open swamp or desert. The origins of the pygmies. The expansion to Central Africa by the ancestors of African pygmies most likely took place before 130,000 years ago and certainly before 60,000 years ago. African pygmy populations are genetically diverse and extremely divergent from all other human populations, suggesting they have an ancient indigenous lineage. Their unapparental markers represent the second most ancient divergence, after those typically found in Khoisan peoples. Researchers found an early divergence of the ancestors of pygmy hunter-gatherers and farming populations 60,000 years ago, followed by a split of the pygmies' ancestors into the western and eastern pygmy groups 20,000 years ago. New evidence suggests East and West African pygmy children have different growth patterns. The difference between the two groups may indicate the pygmies' short stature did not start with their common ancestor but instead evolved independently in adapting to similar environments, which adds support that some sets of genes related to height were advantageous in eastern pygmy populations but not in western pygmy populations. Roger Blench however argues that the pygmies are not descended from residual hunter-gatherer groups but rather are offshoots of larger neighboring ethno-linguistic groups that had adopted forest subsistence strategies. He also notes the lack of clear linguistic and archaeological evidence for the antiquity of pygmy cultures and peoples. He also notes that the genetic evidence can be problematic. Blench finally notes that there is no evidence of the pygmies having hunting technology distinctive from that of their neighbors and argues that the short stature of pygmy populations can arise relatively quickly, in less than a few millennia, due to strong selection pressures. Let's look at Asia and Pacific areas. Southeast Asia. Negritos in Southeast Asia, including the Batak and Eta of the Philippines, the Andamanese of the Andaman Islands and the Samang of the Malay Peninsula, are sometimes called pygmies. Negritos share some common physical features with African pygmy populations, including short stature and dark skin. The name, Negrito, is a Spanish adjective meaning, small black person. The name was given by early explorers who assumed the Andamanese they encountered were from Africa. This belief was however discarded by anthropologists who noted that apart from dark skin, peppercorn hair and steatopygia, the Andamanese had little in common with any African population, including the African pygmies. Their superficial resemblance to some Africans and Melanesians is thought to be from living in a similar environment or simply retentions of the initial human form. They are genetically distant from Africans and have been shown to have separated early from Asians, suggesting that they are either surviving descendants of settlers from the early out-of-Africa migration of the Great Coastal Migration of the Proto-Australoids or that they are descendants of one of the founder populations of modern humans. The Terran who inhabit a remote region on the border of China, Burma and India are the only known pygmies of clearly East Asian descent. Diet and endogamous marriages have been cited as the causes of their diminutive size. The population of Terran pygmies has been steadily shrinking and is now down to only a few individuals. A link between the Terran and the Daring people in China was uncovered in 2013 by Richard D. Fisher, which may indicate the presence of pygmy populations among the Daring tribe. Disputed pygmy presence in Australia. Pygmy presence in Australia has been a disputed matter that has never been clearly resolved. Research from various people including Australian anthropologist Norman Tyndale, American anthropologist Joseph Birdsall, Keith Winshuttle, Tim Gillen and Susan McIntyre Tamoy are very conflicting. Thus, according to Nathan Sentance, a librarian employed by the Australian National Museum, there is no known archaeological or biological evidence of pygmy existence in Australia. Sentance claims it is a myth used to justify the colonization of Australia as well as other countries by Europeans. Micronesia and Melanesia. According to Norman Gabel, rumors exist of pygmy Group International, there is extensive evidence of mass killings, cannibalism and rape of pygmies, and they have urged the International Criminal Court to investigate a campaign of extermination against pygmies. Although they have been targeted by virtually all the armed groups, much of the violence against pygmies is attributed to the rebel group, the Movement for the Liberation of Congo, which is part of the transitional government and still controls much of the north and their allies. Three. Reported genocides. The pygmy population was a target of the Interahamwe during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Of the 30,000 pygmies in Rwanda, an estimated 10,000 were killed and another 10,000 were displaced. They have been described as forgotten victims of the genocide. From the end of 2002 through January 2003, around 60,000 pygmy civilians and 10,000 combatants were killed and often cannibalized in an extermination campaign during the Second Congo War. Human rights activists have made demands for the massacre to be recognized as genocide. 4. Forced removal. In a strategy referred to as fortress conservation in national parks in the Democratic Republic of Congo, such as Kahuzi-Biega National Park, Masok-Ja Protected Area in the Republic of the Congo, and Cameroon's Lobike National Park, heavily armed park rangers come into deadly conflict with the pygmy inhabitants who often cut the trees down to sell charcoal. The conservation efforts of national parks in the country are often financed by international organizations such as the World Wildlife Fund and often involve removing native inhabitants off the land. 5. Ethnic conflict. Starting in 2013, the pygmy Batwa people, whom the Luba people often exploit and allegedly enslave, rose up into militias such as the Persi militia and attacked Luba villages in northern Katanga province. A Luba militia known as Elements counterattacked. More than 1,000 people were killed in the first 8 months of 2014 alone, with an estimated 650,000 getting displaced as of December 2017. Arrows and axes are the weapons often used in the conflict, rather than guns. 6. Discrimination. Historically, the pygmies have always been viewed as inferior by both colonial authorities and the village-dwelling Bantu tribes. During the period of the Congo Free State, pygmy children were sometimes captured and exported to zoos throughout Europe, including the World's Fair in the United States in 1907. Pygmies are often evicted from their lands and given the lowest-paying jobs. At a state level, pygmies are sometimes not considered citizens and are refused identity cards, deeds to land, healthcare and proper schooling. 7. Environmental problems and deforestation. There are roughly 500,000 pygmies remaining in the rainforest of Central Africa. The initial population was as high as 900,000. This population is rapidly decreasing as poverty, intermarriage with Bantu peoples, westernization and deforestation gradually destroy their way of life and culture. The greatest environmental problem the pygmies face is the loss of their traditional homeland, the tropical forests of Central Africa. This is due to deforestation and the desire of several governments in Central Africa to evict the pygmies from their forest habitat in order to profit from the sale of hardwood and the resettlement of farmers onto the cleared land. In some cases, as in Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, this conflict is violent. Certain groups such as the Hutus of the Interahamwe wish to eliminate the pygmy and take the resources of the forest as a military conquest, using the resources of the forest for military as well as economic advancement. Since the pygmies rely on the forest for their physical as well as cultural survival, as these forests disappear, so do the pygmy. 8. Exposure to new diseases. The human rights organization states that as the forest has receded under logging activities, its original inhabitants have been pushed into populated areas to join the formal economy, working as casual laborers or on commercial farms and being exposed to new diseases. This shift has brought them into closer contact with neighboring ethnic communities whose HIV levels are generally higher. This has led to the spread of HIV into the pygmy group. Since poverty has become very prevalent in pygmy communities, sexual exploitation of indigenous women has become a common practice. Commercial sex has been bolstered by logging, which often places large groups of male laborers in camps which are set up in close contact with the pygmy communities. Human rights groups have also reported widespread sexual abuse of indigenous women in the conflict-ridden Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Despite these risks, pygmy populations generally have poor access to health services and information about HIV. The Lancet published a review showing that pygmy populations often had less access to healthcare than neighboring communities. Even where healthcare facilities exist, many pygmies do not use them because they cannot pay for consultations and medicines, they do not have the documents and identity cards needed to travel or obtain hospital treatment, and they are subjected to humiliating and discriminatory treatment. Studies in Cameroon and the DRC in the 1980s and 1990s showed a lower prevalence of HIV in pygmy populations than among neighboring groups, but recent increases have been recorded. One study found that the HIV prevalence among the Baka pygmies in eastern Cameroon rose from 0.7% in 1993 to 4% in 2003. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to Amash the Brainiac, like the video and share the knowledge. Stay tuned for more videos like this.